everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics, Big Baby and STARCRASHER at KINGCOMICS.CA. Today, guys, it is episode 522 of BBR. We're taking a look at KIETH GIFFEN on the last issue of the Dr. Fate miniseries, issue number 4, cover dated October 1987. And this cover definitely representative of what we're going to see in this issue and more of what we've been seeing throughout the whole miniseries. Some great composition, some great layouts, some great draftsmanship, and a very kind of intense, surrealist, cosmic, kind of psychedelic vibe to the whole thing, which I always really enjoy. So what you see here on the cover is definitely representative of what you're going to get in this book here. Really eye-catching as well, very symmetrical, kind of Kubrickian design here. Definitely eye-catching, and a lot of more eye-catching artwork within the issue as well that we're going to take a look at. So starting off, even with a shot like this, very kind of minimalist, I feel like Giffen, again, is just really hitting a stride here when it comes to layout and composition, and storytelling is just really doing a good job. Keeping things simple and easy to read, but also just very evocative, I think, overall. Just these little details of like these, you know, I don't know if that's meant to be sand or, you know, the sun kind of setting and we see some of the stars kind of starting to pop out of the sky or whatever, but just a great, simple visual here of the pyramids. I've been forgetting to read the credits in the past few reviews. I feel like I should get back to doing that more consistently. So real quick, GM DeMatis is the writer. KIETH GIFFEN is the artist. So I assume penciler, since Dave Hunt is the inker. Augustin Mass is the letterer, and Anthony Tolan is the colorist. I've talked about colors in past reviews of this miniseries. I think he's doing a really good job here. This is in around the time where DC started printing certain books on better quality newsprint paper. The color really sits well on it. You don't see the dot patterns of the, you know, the printing press and the combined colors unless you look really, really close. And there's just something really saturated about the colors that I like. And I've talked about this before, how I feel, you know, the late 80s, early 90s color printing on this thicker quality newsprint is some of my favorite when it comes to production values of comic books. Even compared to modern stuff, I think this is better in a way. And again, just some great surrealist visuals here. A good example of it here, where he actually uses the dot pattern here as kind of a design element. Like he wants you to see it here, right? Which I think is clever, as opposed to, you know, the flatter, more saturated colors where you don't see it at all. And just to, you know, go back to a little bit of the storyline, Dr. Fate has been taken over by a demonic entity. I talked about last issue's review how I feel like it almost feels like some of this design here is what influenced later on Venom, because this is pre-Venom by about a year, and McFarlane was working at DC at that time and probably would have seen this stuff. So I wonder sometimes if maybe some of those ideas seeped into his brain when he was designing Venom a year later. Also, as we go through this book, I've talked about the influence of Alex Sinner Munoz and his art on KIETH GIFFEN. I feel like as we move ahead, and especially in this issue, we see less and less of that influence. He does keep some elements. I feel like this KIETH GIFFEN trope, we have a good example of it here. I don't know if this is just because it's time saving and it's quicker to just not have to draw the characters' faces. But he'll do this thing, and he does it all throughout his later career in Trencher. I remember noticing it first, where the whole bottom half under the brow of the face is just one big shadow. Visually interesting, definitely one of his tropes, but I feel like that's one of the last things he took from Munoz and the Alex Sinner series, and that he'll use all the way throughout his career. He's kind of adapted it to his style, but I definitely feel like that comes from that book. But other than that, throughout here, the visuals, really not a lot that calls back to that. Maybe some of the close-up shots here, the type of kind of rough inking in this panel here. But again, as I said before, you'll see less and less of that influence, I think, as we go through the book. But I think his depiction of the Dr. Fate taken over by the demon is really cool. The way he uses the shadows and the smoke and stuff all around it, even here with the multiple mouths, and just some weird surrealist artwork that I really like. And, you know, something like this, it's got to be fun to draw, basically, right? You don't have to follow too many rules of perspective and anatomy and stuff. You can kind of just go crazy with a panel like this as well, right? Even though you're still kind of using a one-point perspective, basic idea of, you know, everything emanating towards us, towards our point of view, towards the foreground, right? But just some really awesome visuals all the way throughout this book. That's really the strength of the book. I do feel like there's a lot to read, so the writer's kind of interjecting and making himself, you know, maybe more important than he needs to be over the visuals. That's just my opinion. It feels like the visuals are telling the story here, and not a lot needs to be said to describe it that much. So maybe one of the weaknesses of this book is just a little bit too much to read. Maybe I'm a lazy reader. I don't know. He's still sticking to a pretty standard layout, though. I've talked about this before in the review for this miniseries. It feels like, you know, just to counter maybe the crazy visuals and the surrealist aspects and all the crazy stuff kind of going down in the panels, he's decided to keep a more kind of sober, somber approach to the storytelling layout and the panel layout, which is very much more traditional, I guess I would say. Maybe more old school even by the time 1987, 1988 rolls around. And again, in these close-ups here, I do feel like there's still a little bit of Alex Sinner left in the inking style, but then everywhere else, he's starting to bring it in his own direction. The clothing still reminiscent of some of the Kirby way of doing the folds and the squiggly lines and stuff. I see a little bit of Kirby in there too, and dropping a weird shadow on the side here. So, where Giffen has been accused in the past of just aping people's styles, it really feels like he's integrating the things he likes about those into his own art style, making it his own. And it really feels like he's doing that here first in Dr. Fate, where he's kind of coming into his own and his own style. Maybe the fact that he's doing all these crazy visuals somehow helps him do that. It's not, the visuals he's been asked to come up with in this series definitely is further away from Kirby and Alec Sinner and Munoz and those influences. So maybe that's helping him kind of integrate those influences into his own distinct style, which I feel is really starting to form here. Maybe not so much in Ambush Bug. There's hints of that, but here you're really getting almost pure Keith Giffen. This is a pleasing page for an artist on a deadline. Probably got through it in 2 or 3 minutes. A few kind of emanation lines, coming from a vanishing point, but not even all the way through. The further up you put them, the more bright and explosive the explosion here seems. And just these little bits of matter here in the middle, I think, add just a nice little touch and get through that page quickly, move on to the next one. Great shot of Dr. Fate here. I like how he's using the smoke again all the way throughout this book. There's a lot of smoke and fog and stuff, but then also making it like a cast shadow almost, or like just in silhouette in front of him. So it's like the shadows in the background behind Dr. Fate and some of the smoke in the foreground are kind of melding together. So it really helps create that surrealist kind of weird vibe that the whole book has. And once again, even using that drop shadow below the brow on Dr. Fate here, which is interesting. I like the close up here, right? Kind of angular lines that he's using. Just a really cool shot, I think. There's some interesting stuff going on in the colors in the eye there. Not exactly sure who's doing that. Probably the colorist, but just adding lots of different kind of color effects to a fairly flat color application all the way throughout, although you're seeing a few different values here on this character with the green they're using. So Keith Giffen using the vertical panels here. We've seen him use it in the past in some of my past reviews on Legion of Superheroes. I always kind of associate the vertical panel to the 90s. It's not like it wasn't being used before, but the 90s, they really kind of popularized it and used it a lot. I just reviewed Death's Head 2 issue number 4 yesterday, and Liam Sharp in that basically uses it as a compositional tool all the way throughout the issue and is consistent all the way through. So there's something about it that really helps the rhythm of the story. And here that's what happens. It just kind of changes up the rhythm a little bit as opposed to the regular more standard kind of layouts he's using all the way throughout. I mean, even here, just the expressionistic kind of vibe of the sky here with, some clouds at this angle here, but others, almost indicating wind or faster traveling clouds. I'm not exactly sure what that's supposed to represent, but it looks really cool. And just such a great panel, even though the characters featured are so small. All the design elements in the foreground, the depth of the that he uses in this image, right? The foreground and background, I think just works really well here. He's got that tree that I talked about that he's using all the way throughout, in very frequently in many panels in the past few issues. And then you get some stuff where like something like this, right? You got the stuff in the back, the power emanations, kind of just like a color hold. And, with no characters featured in this panel, this is pretty much just abstract art, really, if you think about it. And even, you know, though we understand these are probably rock formations and mountains, right? Like we see down here, mountain ranges. These 2 pages here are almost just abstract art, really. And a lot of the work going into the color holds, not having a holding line around, and really works well, again, on this type of paper, and maybe not so much on cheaper newsprint, but I think it really does something cool and interesting here. And here's another page. Like, I definitely don't feel it's gratuitous, right? As a splash page, it's part of the story. It works within the story. The visual storytelling just makes you kind of stop and take a look. But really not much to it here. You know, this is another page that deadline wise you can get through pretty quickly. You know, maybe 10, 12 minutes, I think, if you're a fairly skilled, quick artist to draw something like this, and boom, you're on to the next page. And storytelling wise, it still works and has the effect that you want. Yeah, see here, using those trees as elements, foreground, middle ground, that I talked about before, and that he's used all throughout the series. Kind of a visual element that repeats, and I think is very clever. And again, maybe the last little bit of stuff that's going to look like Alex Sinner we're getting with this character here, who is the old Dr. Fate, right? And the new Dr. Fate, basically the baton is being passed on to him. Kind of weird that it ends just on a small panel like this here, you know, for the whole miniseries, ending on kind of a, I guess, more down to earth, you know, storytelling wise, maybe boring page. But again, this is a writer driven book, not an artist driven book. So maybe that's why, you know, the last page seems kind of, I don't know if I'd say counterintuitive, but at least just kind of not as exciting as a lot of the stuff that we saw all throughout this miniseries. But on the art side of things, really good. Love all the surrealist elements, the cosmic stuff, and even the down to earth scenes like this, I think, are done really well. And just, again, the layering that he does to create depth in those images just works really well. The way he crops the corner of a chair or a couch here, characters way off in the background, right? Kind of establishing the apartment. I think he does that really well, even as opposed to the kind of more surrealist cosmic stuff he does all throughout this issue in the series. And that, I think, is going to end it for our Dr. Fate reviews with KIETH GIFFEN. Anything of mention here in the ads? Not so much. Paul Gulaci or Gulassi, not sure how to pronounce that. Always a great artist. Not sure if this was ever popular, really. I've never really heard about the series. The only real Paul Gulaci stuff that I've looked at is Batman, the stuff he did for Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. So at some point, I'll probably be reviewing those in the future. So there you go, guys. That is my review of Dr. Fate issue number 4. If you're still watching the channel and you're still appreciating the videos and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. If you're watching the channel but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. Really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and it helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books, just like we are. Speaking of comic books, you can check out my creations, Big Baby and STARCRASHER, at KINGCOMICS.CA. So once again, thank you for watching, guys. Have yourselves an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe! Like!